Hi everyone, this is Yvonne Cortez again, and I'm here to present my multimedia project for week 7. So this week we were asked to look at a couple of concepts and give a breakdown on, in our own words, of what we think it means and how it applies to public administration. So the first topic or concept we have is the dichotomy. Dichotomy was actually Woodrow Wilson's idea, where he went ahead and he split public administration into like these two categories. So the first one were those which was on the side of politics, which are those that write the legislation or enact the legislation. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have those that actually are the doers. They're the ones who administrate. So anybody who would fall into the category of people who are doing the actual administration part is any government worker. If you work for a county agency, if you are a police officer, anything that involves public service would make you on the administration end. So you're not actually the people who are writing the law. That's what the politicians are there to do. But you are the person who's actually carrying out the policy that's been enacted. So the next concept that we were asked to talk about was federalism. And I really was interested in this particular week's learning because it was really interesting on how I didn't understand in the beginning of how this whole concept worked. So basically we were founded on a dual federalism idea, and now we have a cooperative system. So basically what it means is that federalism is tied, or I guess defined as, the relationship between the federal and state government and how everything kind of gets run. So for us, the way that it is most of the power lies with the state, and the federal government really doesn't have a lot of power. But what happens is when there's certain things that are kind of divided for each one of them. And so the biggest one that stands out to me or kind of triggered my curiosity was the one with the taxes. So we pay taxes to the federal government, and then if we want to ask for money back in terms, we have to ask through like grants and aids and all of that. But when they give us and there's no guarantee that they'll give us the money back. However, if they do give it back to us, then we go ahead and we have to spend that money according to the way that they give it back to us. So by us giving them the money and then asking for it back, it's almost like we give them permission to tell us how we can use that money. And I think with this particular concept, I'm not too fond of the idea of having to ask permission for something that I gave you. One of the examples in the beginning week lectures was how there's no guarantee that we can get it back. And I think that kind of stinks, especially living in California, because we pay so many taxes. We really are filtering and really a resource for the rest of the states that aren't doing as well economically as we do. So the next concept was bureaucracy. This actually was Max Weber's idea. So he had these 6 rules that he wrote out, or these 6 ideas, and basically it consisted of, when you have good bureaucracy, they asked managers to keep their relationships interpersonal. You have hierarchy in there. It's based on a lot of procedures. People are hired based on their competency and skilled, qualified, rather than like knowing people. So prior to this system, what had happened was you had a bunch of people, especially in politics, and they were being brought in to decision-making, I guess, platforms without having any like prior knowledge or experience or being qualified. So it really was like a politic game where I knew this person, I knew that person, and so I kind of brought you in. And so it wasn't a fair system. And so in order to create a more fair system, Max Weber came up with the idea that you needed to have all of this structure in place in order for bureaucracy to operate correctly. The next one was leadership. So in this week, or this particular topic, there was so much stuff. So I went ahead and they gave us, we had 10 leadership theories that we looked at. And so I'll just kind of go through a few of them, but I'm not going to give you too much detail. I just kind of want to name them off for you. But the main thing was I really want to get you guys thinking about what kind of leader you are, and I actually like this picture the best about be the kind of leader that you would want to follow. I think having this kind of integrity, and it just kind of eliminates question about who you are in terms of leadership, whether you're in the workplace, whether you're in your personal life, whether you're in the church, whatever it is. I think if we model what we want to see, I know, have you heard that saying, like, be the change that you want to see in the world? I think that's going to speak more volumes than just having head knowledge. I know when I talk to people or when I minister to people, the biggest thing that I find is that they're very open to receive whatever it is that I'm speaking into their life because of the integrity that I carry in my own life. So I think that just kind of ties back to being the kind of leader that I would want to follow. I want to know that I can trust the things that this person is telling me. I want to be able to know that this person has my best interest. I think a lot of times, especially in this kind of society and this new generation that's coming up, there's really a struggle where everybody's looking for affirmation and identity and kind of, my kids call it like your basic, and they're like, oh my gosh, I hear them all the time, and they're like, oh, you guys are so basic. You're so basic. And it's my oldest daughter, and she talks to my teenagers a lot. And what she's telling them is like, you're like everybody else. Like, be different. Be yourself. Don't fall into the mold. And I think that's one of the biggest keys, or one of the biggest things that we're fighting against, to have these leaders come out and not be basic. So let me kind of get back to the 10 leadership theories. So we had the great man theory, the trait theory of leadership, the skills theory of leadership, the style theory of leadership. We had situational leadership, contingency theory, transactional leadership, transformational leader, leader-member exchange theory, and the servant leadership. I think for me, just personally as a person, when we had the opportunity to do that other activity, the servant leadership is probably going to be your best one. I don't want to eliminate any of the other ones because I think depending on the situation, all of these can apply. But as you kind of go through, you can see a lot of these are dated. They're not going to work. It's just that as society continues to change and democracy and politics and public administration changes, we have to adapt. I mean, we really, really have to adapt. And in order to do that, we have to find the way that's going to keep the principles of old that we have, like in the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and keep that basic foundation, but incorporate them in ways that appeal and work for this generation, so that we can get this generation involved and wanting to be a part of government and make a difference, not just throw these picketing tantrums when things aren't going the way that they think. And basically, I can't think of the word right now, what it is when I'm talking protesting. Yeah, rather than protesting and throwing a fit and vandalizing and doing all these crazy things, these kids just need to be directed and kind of shown that there are ways that you can avoid those situations if you're actually involved in the policy making process. If we're making our voice heard and making our vote count and participating when it's at the local level, the state level, and then the federal level, then we're less likely to come up against those challenges of having to protest because we feel like some right was violated. It's like cleaning your house is the way that I think of it. If I clean my house a little bit every day, a little bit at a time, it never gets messy. What we find in government now is that we're waiting till the point is escalated that everything's messy. And then it's too hard to kind of go in and tackle and re-clean the whole house. By the time you get to that point, it's going to take a team. You're going to have to do it in sections, and it's not as easy. So I think when just applying this particular component, don't be that kind of leader that waits till the house is a mess. If you do your part now and a little bit at a time, then it ultimately does affect the big picture. I know we don't see it, and a lot of times we don't feel it at our level because we think, hey, what difference can our voice make? But it can actually make a big difference, because if I may not be the person that God uses to change the world, but I may be the person that God uses to speak into somebody else's life who is already at that platform and has the ability and the influence to be able to change a whole generation. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Like everything that we do, again, whether it's any institution that we're in, it's all fruitful. It all bears fruit. Now it's up to you whether it's positive fruit or if it's negative fruit. And so the last one was decision making. We had so many theorists in this particular module of learning that I didn't want to touch on all of them. I think I wanted to focus more on the outcomes of decision making. A lot of times it's hard because you want to do what's best for everybody, and that's the thing. We want a lot of thumbs up and affirmation. If we've learned anything in this course, it's always been that government closest to the people is like the best government. And when we're applying these decisions that we're making in terms of public policy and the things that are gonna happen to the general public, we need to be able to really understand what their needs are. What is it? Is it something that we can teach them to thrive in? Is it that concept of like we need to teach them to fish? Or are we playing that parental role because it's an issue of safety? I think when it comes down to this last aspect, you have to always keep in mind that it's about other people. You know, you want to be able to make that impact and make it in a good way that kind of moves forward. If you in another class that I was taking, there was actually a case study that we had to do, and it was talking about the environment. And one of the things that it stressed was how that when doing like public administration and the environment in terms of like the global economy, globalization, all of that good stuff, it said how you wanted to be able to affect like the present problem without impacting the future generations, like without having negative consequences, like, hey, I fix this now, but then later on we're going to have a major problem on our hands. And so I think with decision making, we need to apply that same concept. However, I just kind of want to twist it up to where the decisions that we make today need to positively affect the future generations. Like we need to not just solve this problem, but we need to solve the problems that we can anticipate in the future. I think when you go back to the Constitution, that was probably the best written document, because when they wrote it with the idea of they were going to solve a problem now, but they needed to lay a foundation that would last throughout the generations. And so even with the changes that have come throughout the years, we find that that particular document is still very effective. So thank you guys for listening to me ramble on, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thanks.